Okay, me and Joe are up here with Marijuana Resolve. We're going to talk to two of the senators that sponsored some decrim legislation, see how it's going. We're going to talk to Senator Baruth and Senator Benning. So hope you enjoy this show. How you doing, bud?
Yeah, man. Nice to see you. Hey, Carolyn.
How are you?
Doing great, man. How are you?
Good. What's up?
You want us over here? I'm here, you two are there.
Oh, okay.
And
Daryl, try and test that mic. I might have to give it.
okay, we'll test the mic. All right, hello everybody. This is Daryl Pillsbury from Marijuana Resolve, and we are up here at the Vermont State House with two, which I just found out, two freshman senators. We have Senator Baruth and Senator Benning. Senator Benning, you're Caledonia County, is that correct? And you are Chittenden County,
Exactly.
correct? Senator Benning, just start with you real quick. Since you guys are both freshmen, how come you decided to put your hat in the ring and here you are?
I've always been interested in politics. I've had a long-standing history with a guy named Graham Newell, who was actually the state senator from Caledonia County. Was in this building for 26 years, and as a result of my being friends with him, I became interested in the position that he was in and decided to take a stab at it when the opportunity came about. I had my kids finally through college and was able to actually leave the day job for a while and have something else to do, and this seemed like a real fun thing to look into.
So now you're on your second year, because you got it, yeah. So what'd you think of it so far?
I love it.
Yeah, isn't it
Walking
something?
into this building every day, it's priceless. When you walk up the steps and you look, you think, how am I so lucky to be able to work in this building? The people who are here are great. It's a collegial atmosphere in the Senate, and the ability to come in here and actually make an impact on people's lives in a good way, I think is one of the most cherished things I'll ever remember.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Senator Baruth, same question to you.
Yeah. Two things for me. One was single-payer health care, and the other was Vermont Yankee. Both seem to be coming to a head in the Senate. So when I started running, the Senate had yet to vote on whether or not to shut the plant down. But it seemed as though that vote probably wasn't going to be the final word, and the Senate would be the place where all the action was on that issue. So I began to run at that point in 2009 as someone who wanted to shut Yankee down, someone who was opposed to nuclear power in general. And it was a 1.5-year long campaign, and I was amazed at how much support I got, not only in Chittenden County, but down in the southern end of the state too.
Oh, you were a hero down there.
Well, I would say that those people are heroes to me, because I would not be sitting here for all sorts of reasons if it weren't for people like Steve West at WKVT and Gordy Baldwin and Lee and Frederick and all of those people that I've worked with down through WKVT.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. And now that you're in the building, you get that same feeling, because I saw you smiling. And isn't it something?
Yeah.
It's a Vermont Citizens Legislature. I mean, we all, when you leave here, you do go back home to your job, and you're back home with your neighbors on the weekends. I mean, it's a different spot here, and people actually do corner you when you're going and doing the groceries and shopping. And I loved it. I could do a whole show right down that, you guys. But since we're here for a specific reason, and one of the things that really caught my eye, Senator Benning especially, you have an R next to your name, and you are from the Northeast Kingdom. Which is a little more conservative than my neck of the woods. And you were a co-sponsor of a decrim bill. Can you tell us a little bit of why you are on with Senator Baruth and maybe a few others?
Actually, if I could just step in, I would say Joe's the lead sponsor, and he brought me along on his bill, so I think
Really?
that's even.
Oh, that is more. I didn't realize he was, and I should have his name. Well, I didn't. I don't have the bill in front of me actually. So your name would have came first. So okay then. Why?
For me, the genesis of this started in 1975 when I was a senior in high school, and I was a guitar player in a rock and roll band. Most of the band members freely partook. I made a conscious decision not to. And all through high school and college, I just decided it wasn't for me, and it was my thing to stand out from the crowd by saying I wasn't going to partake. If you wanted to, I could tolerate that. That's fine. That's your life, and you had no impact on me. I had no impact on you. As luck would have it, however, my band was in a house where we were having practice, and it happened to be a place that the police had been looking at for some time and decided to raid it while we were there. And in an upstairs bedroom, they found 2 empty hashish pipes. And I will never forget this experience because having been arrested, brought down to the police station, given a citation to appear in court, and then getting to arraignment day, it was horrific for me and for my families because literally I was being charged with something I had never done. And, you know, there's a lot of people that say, oh, yeah, sure, but I'm not talking like Bill Clinton. I'm very serious. I had never done it. And the bottom line is I get to arraignment day, and the prosecutor comes out and he says, if the owner of the house takes the rap, we'll dismiss the charges against everybody else. Well, of course, everybody else was in favor of that, and the owner of the house sort of said, all right, I'll do that, and that's what happened. We went downstairs from the courtroom into the police station. Now, the police chief was a friend of my family for 3 generations. And when we got to the police station, he took us aside and he literally, in front of me and my parents, tore up the file that they had on me. My fingerprints and my mugshots were in that file, and they said, as far as we're concerned, this never happened. All right, fast forward from 1975 to 1982, and I'm sitting down to fill out the application to take the bar exam, having gone through law school. And I run into this question that says, have you ever been arrested? Well, my brain is telling me, the cops said, as far as we're concerned, this never happened. But if they answer that question, or if I answer that question and I say no, and they go back and actually find a record, I'll be forever barred from entering the bar. So I went back before I finished the application, and I, sure enough, found the file was still there. What they had torn up in front of me was just a copy. I had to go through an expungement process in the state of New Jersey to have that all taken care of, and I still had to answer the question on the bar exam. I told them the exact same story I've just told you, that I did in fact get arrested. It's all been expunged. You can do the record check, and you're not going to find my name, but I want you to know that that potential has been out there. So at that moment in time, I knew that this whole thing was a dumb way to approach what they have always classified as the war on drugs. The fundamental principle is that if you decide to partake, you're not having an impact on me. And that is not a crime to me. So anybody who wants to partake, as far as I'm concerned, as long as you're not having an impact on my ability to do what I do in my daily life, the law has no business being in the middle of this discussion. So that's what started it for me. When I got to this building, I realized I could actually have an impact there. So we got together.
Cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's a powerful and
It
heavy
is,
thing
it
to
is.
deal with. But I knew Philip from being introduced to him here when we were first given our training, and I said, you know, the way that you want to approach this is you take somebody who is from the conservative neck of the woods, you join them with somebody who is from the more liberal neck of the woods, and you do it together. Because if a liberal comes in and tries to do it, most people are going to say, oh, there's another liberal trying to get a marijuana thing in.
That's right.
If a conservative does it alone, they're going to be looked like a lunatic. But if 2 people do it together, it has a much better chance of gaining some traction. And sure enough, it got traction. So that's what got me into this discussion.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. That's, matter of fact, now that you've been in the building, you'll see a lot of people do try and do that. They make sure they, what was the big thing in the House side? If you could get 4 of us on, you know, you had everybody. You had the progressives, the Democrats.
Right.
So, Philip, and I, you know, I know your background a little bit better than Senator Benning's, but while, you know, you saw him do that, said, hey, sounds like a good idea, let's try and do this together.
Well, actually, Joe suggested to me that we work together on it with the idea of making it bipartisan. But I think the other thing that is important about having a Republican on board with it is that it turns the discussion much more easily to the fiscal side. So the Republican Party has, they've gambled everything in terms of their brand on lower taxes, lower government spending, etc. You can make the argument, and I do often, that the state spends about $800,000 a year prosecuting and incarcerating people for marijuana. If you didn't have to spend that, you could save it, or you could plow it into other government programs. The point being that you'd be reducing an unnecessary government footprint, and then you could have the discussion about, do you want to do something that is necessary? Do you want to return that money to the taxpayer? So, I think Joe and I come at it from different perspectives. He has a more libertarian, Republican approach. He will, if you give him a chance, he'll talk about motorcycle helmets and how he doesn't like them. And I think there's an element of that in this discussion too, that if you plant a seed in your backyard and it grows up into a mature plant and you dry it and you smoke it, what's the government's role there in terms of preventing that, in the same way that if you ride your motorcycle, for Joe? I see a difference there. I think in terms of helmets, there's an argument maybe to be made on the healthcare side.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could go. You guys have already hit on so many points. I tell you what, I wish I could sit you guys in here for like an hour and a half and just keep talking, because the helmet law, there was a rep up there, he's no longer there, John Rogers, who was big with you on that one, whereas I was more on your side, and I had him, and I lived in New Hampshire, but everything, and you know what? There's no reason, that's the good part about this. You do come at it at different sides, so other people get to see different sides.
Right.
Because I come at it at your side, and as a person who actually has partaken, and has a conflict with that when I was serving as a state representative. Mm-hmm. It was a major conflict for me personally, and I didn't want to feel like a criminal, because for me it wasn't going to the Thrush Tavern. Well, you don't have that anymore. But for me it wasn't, I don't drink and stuff, my thing was at the end of the day, I really don't. But I didn't want to feel like a damn criminal, and I am. I'm serving the people of Vermont. You're at a different standard, whether you like it or not. So that was one of the great things about leaving this building, was I no longer felt guilty and I could smoke again. To be honest with you, it just made me feel whoo-hoo, because when you're in here doing what we do, or what you do now, there's some pressure and there is some stress, and I thought I was handling it pretty good, but it builds up.
Two quick things just to tell you though, Daryl. First, I feel the same way about the government telling me I have to wear a hat on my head when I get on a motorcycle. I'm not going to run into you if I don't have my helmet on my head. And the second thing is the Thrush Tavern's actually back open. So
all right. We should have done everything there, Joe. I didn't realize it was open anymore. It's and I'm a person that, because my thing to that is, when are you going to stop? Are we going to have a bath mat police coming in and make sure you put slip pads on your bathroom to make sure you don't slip? Because that's where so many people slip in, elderly, break their hips. The statistics, if you play around like I do with those, it's unbelievable how many people slip in a bathtub that are over the age of 70, break their hips, and then will die from that because they broke their hip. Well, anyway, we got to get back onto the marijuana issues. So you have a bill now in the Senate. How many other sponsors do you have on that bill? Do you know approximately?
Well, there's an underlying bill that has to do with sentencing, which is 138. That's the bill that has been introduced by the committee itself. Our amendment was attached to that. Dick Sears, the committee chair, came along and put in his own amendment, which was designed as a substitute amendment. So the way this process works is, if the body votes on the substitute amendment and passes it, it knocks out our amendment. All of that discussion was happening on Friday afternoon. Tempers were getting kind of short. People were hungry. Everybody wanted to leave for the weekend. Senator Ash got up and asked to have the whole thing lie. That's what ended up happening, although it was a 13-13 vote, I believe, and then the President Pro Tem, who was up at the podium, cast a vote to have it go
Got it.
live. That is where it got left Friday. Now, between Friday and today, I've had a lot of conversation with several people trying to keep this thing moving forward. And I came back in this morning and I had a conversation with Senator Sears. We figured out a way to keep the ball rolling in a given direction, but have us all come together and do it as one. So what is literally now on the table, we've asked to have the bill brought back from the table. It is now on for the action calendar. There is going to be an amendment attached to it that will have Philip, myself, Dick Sears, and Tim Ash, all the 4 players who were actually named out there, on this bill. And what's going to happen is both the marijuana question and an alcohol question, which had been raised by Senator Sears, and this is a legitimate question. He gave this example. If I am a kid under 21 years old, and I'm in my car and I've got my beer here and I've got my ounce of marijuana here, what would happen is if the Benning-Baruth amendment goes through, the ounce is going to go into civil court, but the beer is going to go into criminal court. He didn't want to see that happen. And that makes perfect sense to me. So we take both of those issues, alcohol and marijuana. There's a summer study committee called the Misdemeanor Sentencing Review Committee that is going to be charged with examining both issues and reporting back to the legislature with the intent of developing a bill to take care of both of those problems. I also spoke with House Speaker Shap Smith, and he was okay with having that happen. Shap Smith, as you may know, has been very opposed to anything happening with marijuana, but he's okay with this committee coming back to make recommendations. Now, I don't necessarily know that he'd be in favor of what those recommendations may be, but at least the ball is rolling in the right direction. We have a time frame that's imposed by the committee having charge with making an annual report, and it gives us the ability to reform at a time when we have the ball rolling in that same direction and hopefully come up with legislation that's going to make a lot of sense.
But it sounds like that won't happen until the next session then. Because you
That's
got to do your summer study, and so nothing's going to happen this session with any of those bills. You're just going to try and, when you come back the next round, have it right in order, and then maybe start right from the beginning. And
Well, I don't want to say starting right from the beginning, because that's
Well,
kind
I
of
don't
minimizing what we have accomplished. You know, this discussion would have run into a brick wall at the House. And
That's
so
right.
whatever happened in the Senate, even if we managed to pass something, it would have died right then and there. The issue is not going to die. It is actually set in motion in such a way that the forward momentum of the discussion with the people combined together to talk about it is going to advance that issue, I think, much better next session than we could have done this session.
And I would point out we had much the same result for migrant workers. The Agriculture Committee came out with a bill to allow migrant workers from Mexico and Guatemala to get driver's licenses within the state of Vermont. Ran into a brick wall in the Committee of Jurisdiction, and we wound up with a study that's going to go forward over the summer. So in both cases, you could say, if you took the most pessimistic view, that we wound up with a glass half empty, and it's going to be a glass that's dry come next session. I don't tend to see it that way, because farm to plate, for instance, which many, many people statewide worked on to develop as a concept and to turn into an action plan, that action plan occurred in a study committee, and they came forward with action points that could be very easily dropped into legislation. And so my first year, last year on the Agriculture Committee, that was what we spent our time doing, was converting into legislation the things that the committee had made usable for us. So I'm hoping that on migrant workers' licenses and on decriminalization, we come back next January, and the committees of jurisdiction get not just we studied this issue and it's interesting, but we studied this issue, we've worked out these approaches, here are some points that could be, with a little futzing, dropped right into legislation.
Yeah, and actually I serve on that committee, so I'm going to make sure that there's a bill before we get back here in January.
yeah, that's good then. And you can craft it with what you get
Anyway,
from that's right. What two committees do you sit on, by the way?
Institutions and natural resources and energy.
Excellent. You're ag and
Education.
good. Yeah, because on the Senate side, you actually get your two committees.
Yeah.
On the House side, we just do one, because what we always said was, we did all the heavy lifting. You know how that goes too, right?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
propose it and we clean it up.
That's right, that's right. Actually, my first year here, that's what a lot of people said. Listen, we, like you said with the money part, one of the things that I think is gonna change it over is the fact that Vermont, we're very limited in how we can get revenues here with the population we have, and I just believe, I want to go further, of course, than what you guys are seeing. I would like to see it totally legalized anyway, and taxed, and then that money go into maybe helping the single payer model or whatever, because I believe that would be such a boom. Not only the money we would be saving, the 800,000 that you think we would save, which I think is higher, the money we would save by not putting people in prison. I mean, to me, the dollars are astronomical for the state of Vermont, and I think that is going to be the hurdle. That once we get over that, so all these steps that we get there, the more we can get people. Just the medical marijuana, when we passed that, we found out that that wasn't, going to change the whole state of Vermont. Although you still had to go get it illegally because we still haven't got the although that's ready to roll now, the dispensary bill. We just got to figure out how to.
4 of those are coming online pretty soon.
Yeah.
Let's not sell your viewers short, though, because you made the statement you wanted to go farther than we were willing to go. I think if you get more into the conversation, you're going to find that we want to go there too. But as you well know, in this building, getting to where you want to be takes a series of baby steps, and it takes a lot of coalition work to try to make that happen. We see this, I believe, as a first step on the road to getting to where you want to be.
Yeah, and I think it's a first good step. I mean, I was glad to see at least the Senate side doing something, because we do have a problem with the Speaker of the House on that side. Chap just isn't. It's not going to happen unless a lot of people do put a little more pressure on him, which I hope does happen. One of the things that people will say, we study a lot of things, especially in this house. That seems to be like the you didn't win, you didn't lose, we're going to study it type of thing. And I can't tell you how many studies we had in the 8 years I was there on, well, you probably have had one this year, another one on institutions with our prison system. We moved the women 3 times. I mean, it's just, so I can go on that one at my own. But I wanted to follow that up by saying we are a citizens legislature. That's why the studies, are important to us.
Exactly.
And I don't want to get off the subject too much, but you brought up the VY thing, and what always killed me with the judge's decision on the VY thing was how safety wasn't an issue with VY. And since you guys have been up here, I mean, safety's almost brought up with every issue you discuss, isn't it? I mean, I was amazed at how many times we bring up safety.
Yeah, I don't think the judge said safety wasn't an issue, but Murtha was making the point that federal law reserves the safety regulation piece for the federal government. And as a part of that, legislators had been told for years that they needed to avoid discussing safety, to the point where when I ran as an anti-nuclear candidate in 2009, I'd go to a forum and all the incumbents would refuse to talk about the safety of the plant. And that's one of the things that I was talking a lot about. And it just strikes me as a crazy up is down kind of world where the federal government over the decades has gentled the states to the idea that when it comes to nuclear safety and radiation threat, you cannot speak. And I just, speaking only for myself, I think it's long past time that the states push back hard on that and say, if a chemical plant comes and puts PCBs in our river, we will stop it in any way we can. And if a nuclear plant comes and puts tritium in our river and tritium in our fish, we will stop it. And that's where I am on that question.
Interestingly, that sort of brings us back to the marijuana question, because the federal government has been for years dangling this fruit out with federal money that we have been enticed by, and as a result it has driven our policy with our own citizens on what we do in the war on drugs. Unfortunately, we have succumbed to those federal dollars so much and so often, it literally has now become what we just automatically react to. If there's federal money out there, we want it, we get it, and the restrictions that come along with that are actually impinging on our own rights, which brings me back to the helmet question.
I told you we were going.
That's exactly what happened with the
Has he
helmet.
got a, do you have that in, do you have that bill in?
No.
No.
No, you
So we have this
As I
discussion
said-
pretty much every day.
Yeah.
As you well know,
The
baby
police have
steps
already
are
got to
important.
him, the state police already got to the senator, saying,
Well-
please don't do that.
No, actually, Keith Flynn and I are doing quite a bit of talk. Keith Flynn is the Department of Public Safety Commissioner,
Yeah.
and he is in favor of getting rid of the helmet law.
Is he really?
And so the two of us have been sitting down trying to plan the exact same strategy that he and I were planning for this marijuana amendment. Keith Flynn was directly involved in the amendment because he was looking for a way to have the state police not have to continue to analyze samples at the state police laboratory. He also wanted to move police officers out of the courtroom and let them deal with it in the traffic bureau, just like the traffic ticket would be done.
Right.
Those two steps would save him a considerable amount of money. So there's language in our amendment that actually calls for that to happen, and that comes directly from Keith Flynn.
Good.
But as you know, baby steps.
It
Baby steps,
is, it
baby
is.
steps.
And, you know, part of the reason law enforcement isn't on board, in my opinion, is they get so much money that supports them. You know, it's hard to say, no, we're for, you know, decriminalization of marijuana, but then you lose all the federal, you know, it's just hard to say.
Well, you got these towns, I think there was a town in New Hampshire where, very tiny town, and they're getting a tank, basically.
Keene, New Hampshire, you should see that thing.
It's unbelievable.
It is, they got it, there's now an uproar. They, the councilman accepted it, but now they might have to give it back.
But
The people are like, what are we really
Yeah.
doing? Just because we could accept this and take it, what are we doing with a $230,000 truck?
And basically what the war on drugs has done is it's empowered people who are of an enforcement military mindset. Here's the tools, here's the toys,
Yeah.
take this money and beef up your local law enforcement, and once you've got it beefed up, whether it's pepper spray or tasers or tanks, you need to use them, right? Because otherwise they're not self-justifying, and people begin to ask, why are you spending $60,000 a year to maintain the tank?
I think the 1% getting scared of the 99% and they're starting to arm
You're
their.
sounding more like a Republican.
I guess.
Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you can do that. How much time do we have, Joe? Are we toward the end of our 30 minutes? Well, listen, gentlemen, first off, I thank you so much for taking time and seeing
sure.
us. I also thank you so much for an awful lot of people that feel the same way about me on this issue, for at least taking that baby step and getting us headed in the right direction, hopefully. We do have a governor, I think, that'll sign a bill, should it happen. Any last words, or not last words, but any last statements you'd like to make before we go?
2 years from now, signing party, Thrush Tavern, be there.
Oh, I will, if you guys have a signing.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, gentlemen, I thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming.
And good luck to you next,
Good to
I
see you.
imagine both are running for re-election, the way you were
Oh,
talking.
yeah, that's the other
So-
word we should have said. We should have said, make sure we get reelected.
Yeah. So listen, if you are a supporter, check out, if you're in their area and you happen to see this show, you know, there's another reason you can support each of these guys. I'd like to see them both come back, to be honest with you. So anyway, thank you for serving the state of Vermont
Thanks,
also,
guys.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we are with Senator Ash from, where are you from, Senator?
Chittenden County,
Oh yeah, you're a Democrat progressive.
very close to Vermont.
Yeah.
Chittenden County.
Yeah, I grew up in Chittenden County.
What
but-
town?
Vermont, I know. So listen, we've been interviewing a few senators today about different issues. One of them was Marijuana Resolve, is a group I'm with, and we brought up, we came up to talk to Senator Benny and Baruch.
Yeah.
They both have the S-138
Amendments, yeah.
amendments and stuff. Now you, and it kind of struck me when I'm reading it in the paper,
Yes,
because I don't know what's going on up here.
I
You
know.
know, when you're up here, it's different than what you read.
different time zones.
And so I read it in the paper, and it says this: Senator Tim Ash, Democrat progressive, killed the bill. I was like, wow,
Well-
killed the bill. But then I found out he tabled it. That's not killing it.
Right.
Big difference. So explain to me why you did that.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that, because
Yeah.
you should know better. First, I should say, when I was on the Burlington City Council, I actually proposed decriminalizing marijuana within city limits. And at the time, I believe there were 3 out of 14 city councilors who were willing to do that. The state's attorney at the time, the police chief, all came out against it, and we got crushed. But we did our best. And so my position on this is, frankly, that we should legalize marijuana. And in that regard, the 2 amendments which were being considered last week, in my opinion, don't go far enough. That gets to the heart of my concern on Friday afternoon. Get onto the Senate floor, we're taking up a bill on search warrants, and all of a sudden an amendment is being passed out to decriminalize marijuana and go through a certain, tiered fine system. And I said, well, that's very interesting that not a single one of us got a heads up. And it seemed there were 3 or 4 people in the whole Senate who had been in on this little surprise attack. Right after Senators Benning and Baruth presented their amendment, immediately Senator Sears presented a substitute amendment. He might have already known ahead of time this was going to happen. And I'm looking at it, and let's start with the Benning and Baruth amendment. The Benning and Baruth amendment had, perhaps for the first time that I've ever seen in law, the burden of proving the state's case against you be borne by the accused person. So it said if you believe you've been wrongly accused of possessing marijuana, you don't want to pay the civil fine, you have to go and pay for a lab to test what's actually in your possession. So I thought that struck me as a little weird. That was an accommodation of the Commissioner of Public Safety, which I wouldn't want to accommodate. The substitute amendment, which was the one that I believe had been voted on 5 years ago by the Senate prior to my being here.
Yeah, that was when I was here.
Had a more coherent structure to it, but I think the fines were actually too high. I mean, I actually believe that they're grossly unfair, grossly too high, and I wanted an opportunity to actually find some middle point, perhaps, to make the civil fine perhaps more commensurate with what I don't even believe is an offense, but at least under law it is. And so I got up on the floor, and this is the part that doesn't get captured in the little paragraph about me ordering the bill to lie temporarily, was I said, I found myself in an unusual position because I probably want to be more expansive in the liberalizing of these laws than anyone in the Senate. But I have had but 5 minutes to actually look at either of the 2 proposals which are on the table, which are inadequate for me to improve these bills. And so I said, I don't need to talk to you about generational issues. I don't think I know a single person in my orbit who thinks our current laws make sense. But I want to know how we can make them as appropriate to the offense as possible. And so I suggested we take a little more time. Then it was clear that the proponents were, the authors of the amendments wanted to take immediate action anyways, despite a number of people saying, I would vote yes, but I don't like the way this is going down, and I want a couple days, maybe an opportunity to think this through a little bit, think about whether we have the right response to this issue. But since the voices weren't being heard, that's when I said I moved to order it to lie. Not to kill the bill, but to buy a little time. As you know, ordering something to lie means it stays on the calendar sort of in inactive state.
Right.
Then you pull it back.
And people are sometimes doing stuff behind the scenes to try and...
Exactly. And to make a long story short, which I hope proves my point, is today we put the bill back on the action calendar so we could take it up tomorrow. Now that people have had the weekend at least to think about it and come up with a more appropriate response. The other issue is that the Speaker of the House has said he's not moving the bill. So the Senate can come up with its symbolic action, but if it's going to die when it gets to the House, all it has done has been a fairly deliberate attempt to make an interest group happy. But I don't want to just make the interest group happy. I want to actually pass legislation. And so what we're proposing now is having what's called the Misdemeanor Sentencing Commission actually take a look at this and come back with recommendations about what an appropriate tiered fine structure would look like, so we have time to pass a bill next year. And it appears, at least at this point, that the Speaker is okay with that process.
That's if he gets elected, if he's the Speaker again, which is probably going to happen.
Understood.
And that's where we got to really, I was kind of surprised at how opposed he really is, too.
I don't understand it.
I don't either. I was shocked. I served with the guy, and we'd go out and, well, I don't drink, but he
have a
did.
cup of coffee.
And, and I was just kind of amazed that he was that strong. And I think something has to do a little bit, from what I've heard, is his spouse, though. She's a doctor, I believe. Has a little bit to do with that, too. So, anyway, but I'm no doctor, but I work in a hospital, and from what I've seen, alcohol and prescribed drugs are really causing much more of a havoc on our citizenry than marijuana.
I think I agree with you completely.
Just keep going. I'll hold the door since I got it.
I almost asked you if Daryl was here still. You are still hanging out up here.
I was just kind of visiting. Good. For Daryl Pillsbury, along with Vida Crochetta, who couldn't be with us today, and my cameraman Joe, who is with me today. We want to thank you for watching this special edition brought to you right from the State House right here in Montpelier, Vermont. And again, we got to thank the Senators Benning and Baruth for co-sponsoring the marijuana bill, S-138. And we'll see what happens. As you know, there's not going to be probably a lot happening this session, so we better be ready for the next round. I imagine both of them senators will be back. The bill will probably be back in play, and we're going to have to start working on it, folks. If you are a person who believes in decriminalization of marijuana or even legalization of marijuana, start paying attention. We now have the groundwork to make something happen in Vermont, especially in the 2012 session, okay? So let's pay attention to what's going on, and let's start making sure we get a hold of our local senators and state representatives, because the problem actually relies on the House side with House Speaker Shap Smith. We're going to have to work on that. So again, we'll see you next time right here on Marijuana Resolve. Thank you.